What's everybody? Screech here. We got one from Rev and Collective Shout again, and apparently they're now going to censor countless unethical games. Don't know what that means. Hopefully they'll tell us. Rev is pretty much on top of things. I love Rev's little thing. Rev is the reason why I'm thinking about putting glasses on my character because I wear glasses in real life. I'm just going to put that out there, Rev. You're the only reason why when I get a new model that's probably going to happen. But yeah, let's see what Rev's got to say. If I could push the correct button.
Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So today we have another update regarding Collective Shout and their push to censor more video games they consider problematic. As always, you can help share this video around by liking, commenting, or subscribing to make yourself an engaged viewer so your view will actually count in YouTube's new busted system. Now, this evergreen...
Yep. I've been seeing it on my gaming channel as well. That was actually because of Rev that I found out about this. And for those of you that are not initiated into this topic, Collective Shout is some group of... I really don't want to get canceled, but it's a bunch of... Yeah, it's a bunch of prisoners in Australia who are trying to put their beliefs on everybody else. So they're basically... it's a Karen group who went after Visa. The short version is that they originally supposedly went directly to itch.io and Steam. They wouldn't listen, so then they got all high mighty and piss potty. And then they went after Visa and MasterCard, and then there was a bunch of BS where Visa was supposedly yelling at people when people will call in. And MasterCard said, oh, no, we're not doing this. We don't do this. And then Steam said, ha ha, hold my beer, bitch. And then flat out said, no, we're doing exactly because you said that if you don't, you're going to drop us. So Steam called them on their bullshit for the entire populace. And I don't know where we're at on that. Like, are games coming back? I don't know. I play PlayStation primarily and Nintendo Switch. Excuse me. Was sick last week and still got a cough from it. But that's besides the point. But yeah, that's the short version of the Collective Shout BS. And now they're doing something new, apparently.
Tweet is something I showed only a few videos ago, but it's relevant once again. Would you look at that? Because in a recent interview, a member of Collective Shout has gone fully mask off. They have made their intentions very clear in regards to fictional content featured in video games that they are determining whether or not they are appropriate for gamers. They said they don't care if the content is legal or not.
Oh, well, that's bullshit. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, then you need to get all of those books off of the shelf that women like to read, of like the pirate who forces himself upon... You know the books I'm talking about that your mom and your grandmother read. Like, we all know what books I'm talking about. You also need to get the history books out of schools because there's that content in the history books. Oh, let's see. What else can we go with? Can't really think of anything else at the moment. But I mean, I'm to the point to where, like, I kind of hinted at it earlier, but maybe King Charles should turn that back into a prison colony and tell them to shut the hell up.
They're going to be the arbiters of truth, and they alone will decide if something should exist or not.
So they're playing God. Good to know.
And also on top of that, when it comes to the consequences of those games and their removal, they don't care what happens to the player experience, and they don't care what happens to the developers financially. This tweet is relevant again. They care more about fictional content. They're treating fictional characters like real people and treating real people like fictional characters, and they're mad at you for knowing the difference. So, quick rundown of Collective Shout in case you've missed the...
Oh, cool. He'll probably explain it better than I did.
Previous episodes of this long saga here. Collective Shout, a small group of feminists in Australia. They have been snipping at the ankles of many different developers for years with no success. But about 2 months ago, they switched up their strategy and now are going after payment processors like Visa and MasterCard and putting pressure on them to force platforms like Steam to remove their games. This is
Now, don't get me wrong. Like, you can't see my hand, but there's a bold section right here. We raised our objection to and games on Steam for months. I'm not saying those. This is going on YouTube. And they ignored us for months. We approached payment processors because Steam did not respond to us. I do agree that those games could potentially be maybe problematic, but if they're done well in the right games, you would learn why these are things you shouldn't do. Like, I mean, it's been a while since I played GTA, but like, you still treat the strip club people, the gentlemen's club workers with respect. You treat them like they're people, like they're not objectified completely, you know. Uh, I don't know.
very successful,
It's just,
resulting
it's
in
weird.
thousands of games being banned or in some way censored. Now, we've seen a lot of backlash to this movement, rightfully so, from gamers, and they have played the victim. Collective Shout has even gotten the support of the United Nations, who said this is the most serious form of online violence against women human rights defenders have seen in a long time.
The most serious form of, okay, like online violence, yeah, sure. But I mean, have you seen like what the UK is doing to their people? Have you seen what America did to women's rights here recently? Like, America feels like it's back in the 50s based on how the laws are written. That's all I'm saying.
And you can see from this LinkedIn post, you have their supporters saying, I've been standing up to these cowards who clearly need their local police to check their hard drives.
I agree. He's probably going to reference that in a minute, so I'll let him talk about it.
No one should want that content, and those that do need to be dealt with appropriately. Anyone who thinks it is mere censorship is definitely someone needing consequences. So, yes, we're seeing this over and over again. Even members of Collective Shout vaguely threatening legal action against people. They are
Please,
trying to silence and even put people in jail
please
at this
sue
point.
people.
So, what we have today is an interview from Jack Connor over at Tweaktown, and he interviewed a member of Collective Shout and really just asked the flat out important questions and got surprising answers. I think even he was surprised at their honesty, their foolish honesty, be it at that. But anyways,
People will always tell on themselves. That's just how it is. You give them enough time, they will rat themselves out. Now, he didn't breach on the having the hard drives checked. Everybody in Collective Shout supported Netflix TV thing. I'm not sure what it was, but it was called Cuties. And it was basically how I look at it and understood it, sexualizing 6-year-old cheerleaders. I mean, there's no if, ands, or buts about it. It was a huge backlash. Everybody heard about it at one point. Um, they're okay with sexualizing children in the movie Cuties, but they're not okay with the other stuff, like pot call the kettle black, whatever you want to say. There's a lot of hypocrisy here. Just saying that.
they interviewed Caitlin Roper, the campaigns manager at Collective Shout. And this is just the intro to the article, and they're just going through what Collective Shout does. We already know that, but this is the individual that they are interviewing, a feminist activist who's obviously, like I said, the campaigns manager at Collective Shout, not just the manager, but also an active member as well. And they've been trying very hard to push the goals of Collective Shout. And here's some of the really key answers they gave to Jack. So here's one question, straight to the point. What types of depictions of women in games do you believe are most harmful and how? And she says, the global research has consistently found that depicting women as sexual objects as things existing for someone else's arousal is harmful and contributes to negative impacts I outlined earlier. But here, the games we objected to went much further than sexist and objectifying representations of women. They glorified men's violence against women, portraying women as desiring and deserving of this abuse. They depicted extreme violence and torture of women. I've been working in this space for 15 years, and I've encountered some pretty extreme material, and what I came across here was some of the worst I had ever come across. Now,
At face value, for me, that's not a bad thing to take issue with and try and rectify and stuff like that, if that's all the game is about. But now, if you're playing like Call of Duty, whichever one, and you're like going against Al Qaeda and you come across that and like that's what's going on, like, is that the bad thing? Like, should you like completely blacklist Call of Duty in that case? Like, nuance is key. Let's see what Rev has to say.
you can see the vague language talking about material, this, and that. They're talking about video games. They're not talking about any content featuring real women. They are talking about video games. They're talking about fictional content here. And they're trying to make this statement that global research has found this link, but they're not clarifying whether this is about fictional content or not, because I think they'd be very hard pressed to find any support for those claims. So that's why they're being intentionally vague. Now, keep in mind, they're talking about this harmful content, creating these dangerous depictions of women and girls.
Bam!
They are a cutie supporter. As an organization, they collectively support cuties. In case you don't know, the Netflix film from a few years ago where it was about real girls around the ages of 11 and 12 doing a twerking
Okay. I said they were 6. Still, not much better. Might as well have been 6.
competition. In fact, hundreds of young girls went through the audition process for this film, exploiting all of them. But they support the existence of that film, but are upset about certain depictions in fictional content.
Yeah, objectifying. Well, I mean, this is going to sound rude, but like, how is objectifying children not worse than objectifying consenting adults? Granted, in some of those things, the adults are not consenting. And like I said, that is another reason, like that's a legit thing to be okay. I'm okay with them like being a little upset about, but call a spade a spade.
Just making that abundantly clear. And also, they say, this extreme content, this is the same group that try to get Detroit Become Human banned as well.
Which I don't understand that. Like, I need to talk to my brother and some of my people who have played that as to like what happens in that.
Also have been responsible for getting horror games banned. So it goes way beyond what.
Why? Because women get killed and men get killed? Okay, then ban movies, ban television. Like, why? Just go full on. Put the pedal to the metal. Let's have a lead foot. Why go slow? Let's just
describing in a very vague sense. But here's another question. Are the concerns with video game content about the legality of the content, or are they primarily ethical/moral concerns? Now, I think we all had a strong feeling of what their answer was going to be here, but they make it very clear. So they talk about the problematic games they found will likely be illegal in Australia. Those reported to the Australian Classifications Board were geo-blocked because they had illegal and were being sold, or they were illegal and they were being sold illegally.
First off, you can't sell things illegally. It's not like it's a black market. I mean, you can sell things illegally, but like this type of stuff, no. It was legal, and then you wrote a rule that no longer made it legal.
Campaign calling on payment processors to stop processing payments on platforms hosting this content was also a call for them to enforce their own existing terms and conditions.
They were enforcing their terms and conditions.
Which is very misleading because when Steam was targeted, for example, they added a rule that said now the content has to comply with payment processors. So they had to literally create a new rule on their platform because of the outrage coming from groups like Collective Shout. So they're being very misleading once again. But here's where they get it really, really clear. They say, however, regardless of the law, let me say that again, regardless of the law, the harms of glorifying violence against women and children are well established. And we would argue that any company acting ethically would not host or profit from this content. So all they have is an emotion based plea, a demand based on what they deem ethical decision making. That's what they're drawing all this from. It's not about legality. They probably found cases like they mentioned here with content being illegal in Australia, but Australia has crazy laws about fictional content in particular. In fact, most anime and anything with adult content from anime is on paper banned in Australia. In fact, they have banned adult content featuring real adult women if they look young, which is a crazy thing that happened a few years ago.
That sounds re, just. If it's real life people, you have real life identification. If they just look young, sorry, but they look young, plain and simple. You, it's not like they're dressing up in. Well, I mean, they might be, but like, I don't know.
Really, like the face of consent. Like you can be a full grown adult, but if you look young, however they define that, they would consider that content illegal in Australia. So they're using the very, very draconian laws that involve censorship in Australia to basically be the entire global basis for legality, which, you know, what's stopping someone living in a Middle Eastern country from applying their law to
Ooh.
people like Collective Shout and whether or not they would have a say in any of this stuff? Like, it wouldn't really work out too well for them. But
No, because if it was a Middle Eastern country, they'd have no rights. And because it's mostly being done by women, they would be told, quote unquote, to shut the fuck up by Middle Eastern law people, because that's how it kind of is over there, which I don't think that's right either. Like, I'm fine if they want to ban that stuff in Australia, but stay the hell out of my backyard. That's all I'm saying.
they make it clear it's not about the law. They just want to decide what is ethical, what's not ethical, and they're going to be the arbiters of truth in that regard. And it's all very, very transparent. And that's how we end up with members of Collective Shout trying to frame characters like Annie, the new Grok system on Twitter, as childlike or something that should be banned because they look at a busty, curvy anime girl and they start thinking about children being abused. And now you have to suffer because of their delusions and projection. But that's what we're working with here. Some very unhinged people, but they continue on.
I mean, again, there are some legit concerns with some of these things, but like, I do DoorDash for a living. I went to a middle school the other day. There are some children there that look more adult than the teachers. Like, that doesn't justify it, but I'm just saying, like, there is a genetic evolution going on for some reason, and it's not good for anybody.
So, Jack asks, do you believe that people who engage with sexual content Collective Shout has advocated against are more likely to participate in it in real life? It's a pretty loaded question, but they say, based on the response to our campaign, men engaging in criminal threats to assault us, dox us, creating and distributing illegal image-based abuse content, sending us violent.
Okay, so these are the radicals, and they're using them as the tip of the spear, which I mean, nobody should be threatening to harm them. You know, nobody should be doxing them, though they're dumb. Definitely the creation of illegal images, because that's identity theft and there's no consent there, stuff like that. Like if that's definitely like that's a no.
content and illegal CSAM.
I don't know why you have to specify illegal CSAM when CSAM is just illegal in itself. Like it's kind of implied. That makes me think your intelligence isn't that high. Not you, Rev, but the person who said this.
Clear, many of the men defending their R-word games perpetuate crimes of violence against women because they are doing it to us right now.
Not true. Not true. Because there's a thing called role play, and couples do that all the time. They're not right in the head, most likely, but it is something that couples do. Doesn't mean that they do it all the time. They're in perfectly healthy relationships.
They are comparing what's happening in video games to their experience of getting targeted online. And we'll talk about these certain threats they're claiming they're receiving in just a second, but they continue on saying these men make it clear that these misogynistic attitudes required to engage in and defend R-word games are not limited to fiction and video games, but that they will and do perpetuate abuse against actual women in the world. So they're using a sample size of Twitter users who are saying bad things to them as a entire representation of the male gender, and also saying, well, we have to punish all of you. Do you see how reaching that is? On top of that, two very key things. There are women who are very vocal against collective shout. They ignore that that's happening, but also,
Yep.
if anyone is consuming fictional content and then it's affecting them in real life, they have a mental illness. And we should not punish regular people who can separate fiction from reality for the actions of those who cannot, who should not be catered to when it comes to legally available fictional content. On top of that, there's been a lot of claims that Caitlyn in particular, the one that's being interviewed here, has been faking their own harassment. There was multiple burner accounts.
Oh, that would be wonderful to find out it's all fraud. Because, like, if those accounts come to find out fake and she was doing this, and oh, please tell me there were police reports filed because it's one of those countries. That would make my day. That would make my day.
That they used as examples of them being harassed, accounts with 0 followers, and just freshly created in the month of August during all of this, and also based geographically in Australia. It seems like a lot of coincidences, and also the messages just seem so ridiculous that, yeah, some people have suspected that the harassment they're using to now punish all men is based on things they're creating themselves. That's the theory.
Sorry, Rev. The bottom line, the misogyny just doesn't look right on a spelling, and that confused me.
Using to now punish all men is based on things they're creating themselves. That's the theory some people have. But here's another question saying, what would you say to those who have described this campaign and its impact as censorship? Now we're getting into a really crazy territory. So they say nobody has a human right to simulate and enact fantasies of assault and extreme violence against women.
But there's couples that do it all the time, like just in the safety of their own bedroom.
Not being able to access these R-word games from popular gaming platforms is a minor inconvenience, not a violation of a person's rights. Payment
If it's not illegal, then it is a violation of our rights because you're taking it away from us without our consent.
processors get to determine if they do not want to host illegal content, including all of that stuff right there.
Payment processors don't host shit other than take my money, use my money. You know, they don't host anything other than payment thing. So they're not hosting shit. So that's invalid automatically.
they had already determined. And so they should. I would ask those who view the loss of their R word games as censorship to consider if they are concerned with women's basic human rights and the glorification of male violence against women. So again, they're trying to be intentionally vague here, mixing up fictional content with real life abuse, and they're trying to make connections that they can't really prove. On top of that, they are trying to police fantasy. So now, even if you have this fantasy, you're doing something wrong. If you have fantasies of anything dark or taboo, apparently they can do whatever they want to you because they determined whatever that is inappropriate and hurting people in their minds. So therefore, the payment processors can start determining whether or not this content should be allowed. And again, the way they describe what the payment processors are determining whether or not they want to host, they're talking about things in a way that seems like they're talking about real people being featured. When we're talking about legally available fictional content, video games, that they are now using their own country standards or their own ethics in some cases to say should not be allowed. But anyways, let's go to the next question related to that, saying, how do you distinguish between sexual content that is exploitative versus consensual fantasy? And they say, our objection is to content that glorified violence against women and children. As I reviewed the content tagged with these certain themes on Steam, I did not come across any that was intended as casual violence, but this is a common trope that women want to enjoy that stuff, when in reality the violence is deeply harmful. And then they say, critics argue this removes agency from women creating or consuming adult content. How do you reconcile protection with freedom of choice? And the Collective Shot employee says, there is no greater removal of a women's agency than R-wording. Media that glorifies violence against women.
I disagree. I totally disagree. I'm gonna be honest. There was a lot of words that were said, and I didn't catch that first part. How do you distinguish between sexual content that is exploitive versus consensual fantasy? Okay, so back to the bedroom thing that I keep bringing up. Our objection is to content that glorified sexualized violence against women and children. Okay, as I reviewed the content tagged with blah and blah on Steam, I didn't come across anything that was intended as consensual violence. Okay, fair. But this is common in blah trope that women want or enjoy abuse, when in reality, this violence and abuse is deeply harmful. Okay, again, nothing wrong with that. You're just objectively not taking care of things properly. Critics argue. Okay, so then critics argue this removes agency from women creating or consuming adult content. How do you reconcile protection with freedom of choice? There is no greater removal of a woman's agency than blah. I won't say the words because, again, YouTube. I disagree with that. You want to remove women's agency? I mean, again, here in America, we've basically went back to the 50s. There's so many rights that have been removed just from women. So like, there's more agency. Like, don't get me wrong, like that doesn't help, but like, there's way more you could do to remove a woman's agency than just that. That's all I'm going to say from that.
All women, regardless of whether a few women participate in its creation or consumption. It seems like right here they're completely misleading the point here. They're not talking about someone being victimized in real life. Again, this is in reference to these consensual fantasies featured in video games. And
honestly, Rev, I wouldn't even leave it at just video games. Again, what about the books that are out there? Like, women read more than they play video games. How about you get rid of that?
they're also saying if women participate in the creation of this, they're also wrong as well, and they don't get a say in what they get to do, which is pretty ironic.
Oh, so you remove that woman's agency.
When we're talking about a loss of agency here, and you think about, you know, that well-known fact that when it comes to hentai, for example, in Japan, the majority of artists are women. That is a fact.
Yep.
So you're basically saying anything that gets produced out of that features anything taboo or extreme in fictional settings, oh, well, they don't count because these women, they're siding with these men who are just wrong. It's a really big reach, to say the least. And again, roll it back here. They're saying that this media just cannot exist. But then they defend cuties featuring real children being exploited. Make it make sense, ladies and gentlemen. But next question.
1 and 1 does not equal 2 here. I agree, Rev.
What would you say to the thousands of developers who worked on these games that are currently legal and have suffered financial damages due to their game now being removed? And they say, really just in the highlighted parts, all you need to know, we are not responsible for or privy to the platform's processes, and we stand by our call to payment processors not to process payments on platforms knowingly hosting and profiting from R-word games. Now, we're again talking about fictional content that's legal in most places, but we're also talking about games that they have banned that include horror games. They have facilitated the ban of games that don't even feature the thing that they're using as the only justification to go in there. What are we talking about here? It is such a blatant deflection of what's actually going on here, and they're trying to gaslight you into thinking this is all about something featuring extreme content, and again, just very vague language, and that is on purpose. They care more about protecting fictional characters than they do, not just for the experience of gamers, but for the developers making them. They don't care if they lose money, if they have financial hardships because they decided their game shouldn't be allowed ethically. Do you not see the crazy dichotomy here? They care more about fictional characters than real people, as long as it serves their narrative and their beliefs. That's why Collective Shout and groups like them are so dangerous. They can't just look at something they don't like in fiction and say, that's not for me. I find it disgusting, whatever. But I'm just going to ignore it. No, they dig into the bowels of places like Steam, trying to find anything that upsets them morally, and they don't just look away. They look right at it and say, that has to go. Nobody should be able to have that. That's the issue here. That's why people are so strongly against Collective Shout. They should not be the arbiters of truth in what's allowed and what's ethical or legal or what have you. And there's another question, this time shifting it to violent video games. So
I will say, like, I think Rev is onto something with this, and it's the whole rules for thee, not for me type thing. There's that. There's also the wrong think that other people have been bringing up. Like in the UK, you have the wrong thought, so you're wrong. For me, this is basically forcing religion upon people. And the Crusades happened. Or the American Revolution. Or the Crazy King, Hamilton, that whole story. You know, you may want to check what pot you're pissing in.
say violent content games where players massacre people is sold without issue, but sexual content is being targeted. What do you think about sexuality, particularly involving women, draws more scrutiny than violence? And they say, I'm not sure that I agree that violent content is sold without issue.
No, I no, I that first part I agree with.
It most certainly is at this point. There's been a lot of attempts to get rid of violent content. They have failed. They were something that were laughed at, or at least in hindsight, movements that are now laughed at, like Jack Thompson, for example, trying to get GTA banned. We look back now and think that guy's an absolute clown. But anyways, they say there has been a discussion about violence in media and video games and a connection to real world violence. However, Collective Shout's work focuses on sexual objectification, exploitation of women and girls, and how media, advertising, and popular culture can contribute to this, normalize, justify, or even trivialize it.
Straight up, I got anger issues. Grand Theft Auto helped me get through those when I would have bad days at school from being bullied. Just like when I got old enough and was able to join weightlifting, that helped. Call of Duty, like it's just nice to go and just keep running and running and running and doing what that game does. Like those games do help people with issues. It's an escape for a reason. I don't know where I would be if it wasn't without some of those games. Granted, it's not the exact topics that this is being talked about, but I'm just saying they're in the just violent aspect. There was some things that apply.
Reality is that an alarming number of women and girls experience violence and abuse by men, and this is the cultural context in.
First off, you're wrong. They're not men. Men don't do that. Just straight up. Um, and it's usually by family members before it's someone else. That's just a sad statistic.
which this violence occurs, a culture that routinely portrays women as sexualized, objectified bodies for men's use in entertainment, and which normalizes, excuses, and glorifies. Yeah. So again, they're focusing on the mentally ill people who see something in media and fiction and go, oh, that means I can do that in real life. They are mentally ill. We're not going to cater to people like that who can't separate fiction from reality. But they ask another question saying, if advocating for the removal of these games is based on grounds that they are illegal, would you and Collective Shout agree that the removal of games depicting murder and any other illegal activities?
Okay. Boom. This is what I've been talking. Well, not what I've been talking about, but like this is something that has been talked about. It's like, you're talking about this. That's illegal. Why can't you? Like, no, they.
And they say, again, our work focuses on combating sexual objectification. They basically say that, well, we're focusing on our little corner here of concerns, but it's a good point that they raised in the question. Like, if you are worried about abuse, violence of any form being replicated in real life based on fantasies depicted in video games, why are you stopping at one point but not extending it to violence in general? Like,
Ding, ding, ding,
if there's
ding,
a
ding.
game you can go around harming women in a non-sexual way, just physically hurting them, explain to me why.
Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, Borderlands, and the new ones because they added females. Dead by Daylight. You know. League of Legends, Valorant, Fortnite, Minecraft. Yeah, like why are all these okay?
That harm is
Roblox.
not something of their concern. It's weird. It seems like they're afraid to go after big targets, especially now. I mean, they have a very good time bullying a bunch of small indie developers who might be a one-man team, but will they be able to succeed over the big giants of the industry, particularly ones that have violent content? I think that's why they're holding their punches on that. But there'll be some follow-up saying, if not, how does Collective Shout distinguish between which crimes are acceptable to include in publicly accessible media and which aren't? They say, please refer to previous answers.
I'm curious to what Rev says about this, but like that was kind of answered literally in the previous question.
Should payment processors like Visa and MasterCard be capable of drawing a line between what transactions are approved and what are blocked, even if the content of that transaction is technically legal? Should the same standards apply to films, comics, or books depicting similar themes? They say again, please refer to previous answers.
That was not answered though, as far as I don't have good brain, so like me memory know that well. But that was not answered. That was a question I think I asked. Like during this whole thing, I think that was a question that I asked. And I want an answer. I know what the answer would be. It would be yes. Because they big dum-dums.
Do not actually give any sort of an answer on the topic of violence in video games or the fact that payment processors, should these standards be applied to everything? Because I guarantee a lot of books that are being sold in stores that target women, for example, I'm sure they have a lot of very dark themes. Like it's kind of a meme at this point, but yeah, go to like
Dungeons and Dragons, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter,
Barnes and Noble, and like go to like the women's fantasy section, right? And it's gonna have a lot of dark themes that Collective Shout would normally care about, but I guarantee they will never cross into that realm for reasons that are very obvious.
Yeah, you don't fuck with the grandmas.
For now, that's going to do. It's going to do it for this update on Collective Shout. I know it's a little bit of a long one, but yeah, it was a pretty interesting interview. They've gone mask off. They can't separate fiction from reality, and they're going to punish you for knowing the difference. But anyways, that's going to do this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Rev. Yeah, it's a whole lot of stupid. And yeah, it's a whole lot of stupid. Yeah, the king needs to tell his people to shut up. That's pretty much all I got for that. I said everything I had to say. Please give Rev a shout out. Go check out the original video. It will be linked in the description below. As always, I will see you in the next one.